Welcome to all of you. My name is Alan Reed. I'm the Executive Director of the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network, and we welcome you to the Connection Series. It's particularly a great day for this. First, it's beautiful here in Chicago. Hopefully it is just as beautiful wherever you are. But it's also, I'll say the start of a great week. Things just opened up on Friday completely in Chicago. And I know in lots of places around the country, really signaling a change from what's been a difficult period back into hopefully a sense of normalcy, but some changes. And on today's conversation, we're going to talk about what some of those changes look like as we explore sort of the workforce shift, as we're calling it. Grab a cup of coffee. I have mine here, and happy that you'll be joining us. Also, thank you for joining us on all of our virtual events. This is, I think, the 70-something virtual event the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network has done since all of this craziness started last year. We thank you so much for being a part of them, keeping this incredible industry together. Those of you who aren't as familiar with the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Network, we're a mission-driven industry organization, 4 years old, 125 corporate members, and we bring together the power of the food and beverage industry in Chicagoland to grow the industry, drive innovation, grow the local economy, and create jobs. These things are important all the time, but they're especially important as we're recovering from this incredible global pandemic. If you're interested in becoming a member, reach out to me or anyone, or we'll be happy to guide you through that process. Super easy. We couldn't do what we do without our members, our cornerstone members, our premium members, our members, and again, 125 members strong, and we just couldn't do it without them, and couldn't do it without our partners, couldn't do it without, I mean, it's incredible, especially as we look at all of the challenges that all of us have faced over the past 15 or 16 months or so. Also, what we launched last year was a nonprofit, a charitable nonprofit called Bigger Table. Bigger Table brings together the same amazing food and beverage industry of Chicagoland to address persistent issues facing our local communities: food insecurity, unemployment, inclusive economic development. And just in the past year, Bigger Table has donated 560,000 servings of healthy food to area food banks and food pantries. And we're on our way to delivering another 1.5 million servings this year. To find out more or to donate, please feel free to click the link or reach out to any of us on the CFBN or Bigger Table staff. The conversation starts here, so please take a look at the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. You can use that to make comments, say hello, talk back and forth, or even ask questions. So use that while we're here, and then let's continue the conversation in social media. We love to keep that conversation going and get connected with you that way. We also have a variety of upcoming events. One I'm really looking forward to later this week, Stirring Up Cocktail Trends. If you were lucky enough to get one of our 50 cocktail sampling boxes, I know you'll be enjoying that. Coming up on July 8th is Taste the Trends, and we're looking specifically at how the restaurant and food service industries are rebuilding after COVID. And then we'll have a founder series, which reaches out to our emerging brands here in the greater Chicagoland area. And we'll be talking about an ever important conversation, production and operations, specifically looking at co-packing. We have an amazing, amazing panel today, and such an important topic. So with that, I'm going to Lisa Johnson, who is a managing director at our sponsor, Kincannon and Reed, and Greg Benefield, who is the managing director and of the national food and segment leader for Marsh, who will be our moderator. I'm going to give it to the two of you to take away.
Thanks, Alan.
Welcome,
everybody. Kincannon and Reed, we're pleased to join in sponsoring the Chicagoland Food and Beverage Connection Series today. And today, like as Alan said, Our topic is going to be the workforce shift, and our moderator today is Greg Benefield from Marsh, and we have a distinguished panel including Michael Fassnacht from the City of Chicago and World Business Chicago, and two of your esteemed colleagues from HARIBO and Blommer Chocolate. So I want to thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to networking with you following the panel discussion today too. So stay tuned for that as well, and I'll turn the mic over to Greg.
Great, thanks Nathan, thanks Alan and the Chicagoland team. You guys have done a great job putting together this panel today, and I'd like to take a moment just to begin the introductions, and so I'd ask each of the panelists, if you would, introduce yourself, your role and company, to the perspective that you're bringing to the conversation today. So Michael, if you wouldn't mind to introduce yourself first, please.
And thank you, Greg, for having me on this panel this morning. I have two roles within the city. First, I'm the first ever Chief Marketing Officer for the city, really owning to promote the city across four audiences: our residents, tourism conventions, businesses, and then talent. And then just a few weeks ago, I got named as well the permanent president and CEO of World Business Chicago, which is the economic development arm for the city.
Great, thanks, Michael. Margaret, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Margaret Sofio, and I'm with Blommer Chocolate. Blommer Chocolate, as I'm sure all of you in Chicago are very familiar with the beautiful smell of chocolate that as you walk downtown. I've been with Blommer for 4 years. I'm actually based in Pennsylvania, so we don't actually have a true corporate office. So part of our executive team is based in Pennsylvania, and part of our executive team is based in Chicago. We have plants in Pennsylvania. We have a plant in Pennsylvania, the plant in Chicago. We also have a plant in Union City, California, and one in Camelford, Canada. And the perspective I'm bringing today is trying to get a sense, as I share what Blommer's experiencing, of this odd balance between COVID and the impact on the economy and the impact on people, and then the businesses like ours that were essential functions that can't keep positions filled, can't keep all of our staff in place. Some of that's COVID related, some of that's manufacturing related. So it's a really unique balance, and I want to talk a little bit about how we're handling that.
Great, thanks, Margaret. And Babatu.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Babatu Short. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources with HARIBO of America. I'm sure you're probably familiar with us, but if not, I wore this nice little gummy bear as a friendly reminder. We're located in Rosemont, and we're a third generation 100-year-old confectionery company. And we've got a plant going up in Wisconsin, and so we're expanding our footprint. And so in terms of what I bring to the conversation, I bring that shift from a truly sort of corporate salaried workforce transitioning into hourly in the midst of COVID. And also just philosophically, we've really had to challenge ourselves culturally, because philosophically we're a very team-based, person-to-person, hand-to-hand relationship-built company. It's a family-run company. And so this idea of flexibility and remote working and all these kinds of things that we've adjusted to, I think the biggest challenge initially was really philosophical. How do we do that? And now looking forward, I look forward to talking about some of that and what that looks like this morning. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Babatu. I appreciate that color around that, and I know you guys are a collaborative firm. So let's kick off. We've got a few questions for the panel, and then toward the end we'll have some Q&A for the group and the audience as well. So Michael, let's first touch on some good news. I know Chicago went through phase 5 reopening last week, and so a couple of questions for you around that. What looks different this week? What changes can we expect over the summer?
So first of all, as you just mentioned, we announced on Friday that we're moving into phase 5, and more or less most restrictions are gone. We have no capacity limits anymore anywhere in the restaurants or hotels. The only thing is that the mask wearing policy is still, there are two really angles to that. First is still in public transportation, airports, planes, there's still a federal mandate to wear masks. And secondly, companies can have their own policies. So most retailers have said that mask wearing for fully vaccinated residence is not anymore obligatory, but we still recommend, if you're not vaccinated fully, which means 2 weeks after your second dose, you still wear a mask. So really, it's almost behaviorally back to pre-COVID, which is clearly a huge relief after 15 very, very challenging months for all of us on a personal level and professional level. So I think we are excited about that to come. If you saw this weekend, the city's back alive. A lot of people out on the street. I talk with a lot of CEOs from all across industries. The restaurants are doing overall really well. Their biggest challenge is labor shortage, but it's tough to get a reservation. Hotels are a little bit behind. They're slowly picking up. But the O'Hare Airport was almost at 90% capacity last weekend. So we're making big progress, and we continue to believe to see this throughout the summer.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Comments from other panelists around Chicagoland and what you might be seeing or experiencing with the changes with Phase 5.
Well, I'll quickly comment, just say that not only Phase 5, but I would just say over the past month and a half, I've noticed the Chicagoland Hallmark traffic, which to me was evidence that people are starting to get out in the world, get more comfortable again, and really re-engage. And so while I don't love the traffic, that's, to me, it was a sign of optimism. And I said, okay, all right, this is feeling a little more like the Chicago I know. I'm a southeastern Wisconsin guy, and so I spent a lot of my life zipping down to Chicago to enjoy the landscape. And of course, now we're based in Rosemont, but I've always been keenly aware of the traffic because of the population, just a lot bigger than the city to the north, right? And so it felt more normal when I was there, which is great.
Sure.
Contrast a couple months back, and we went and stayed in a hotel. It's just kind of a nice way to spend a little quick time with the kids during the spring. And we decided to go to Navy Pier, which is a wonderful place. And of course, you couldn't park there, you couldn't go there. It didn't even occur to me that would be the case. So things are much more normalized, which is helpful because I think people in most cases are really ready for it.
Yeah, no, I have to say it's fantastic, Greg. I was down in the city last Wednesday, and the difference between the city this past Wednesday and Monday, what a difference a weekend makes. I mean, it's back, and it's coming back fast. I've been going out to restaurants for about a week now, and I think people are starting to go back to work too. I see service picking up in the restaurants. Where you couldn't find service a week ago, people are starting to get some of their people back. So I have high hopes that it's going to come back quickly.
Fantastic. Well, we've talked a little bit about the labor and part of that conversation. So let's continue that on. And this question goes out to Margaret, Babatu, and Lisa. So shifting to that and talking a little bit more about recruiting and staffing, what are candidates' expectations about working in the office, traveling, and relocating for new opportunities these days?
Yeah, I can kick that off and say
Sure.
The recruiting efforts are very unusual right now. I liken the professional recruiting process right now to the real estate market. People are putting their resume out there and asking for higher dollars than their current value to see what's out there, kind of shopping themselves, which it's a good market. They're doing that with their homes and they're doing that with their jobs. I also have found within the COVID time period, we really changed our philosophy around the candidate pool. So we had a number of professional kind of analyst jobs open, and we hired them in states in which we don't operate. And like Babatu mentioned, it is unusual for us as well, because we were a very family-owned company that was recently acquired by Fuji Oil, but still with that same sense of people working together. We actually, when I mentioned earlier that we don't have a corporate office, we actually all work within a plant, with the exception of we just had to expand due to some additional Fuji colleagues coming in. We needed some additional office space. So that's been, the professional market has been very unusual. And we typically have had great fortune with our recruiting on the professional side, very low turnover on that, in that grouping, lot of tenure and not many openings. So this year, when we had some people leave, we had an interesting larger recruiting pool to pull from. Now, contrast that with the hourly recruiting. And I will tell you, hourly recruiting was tough before COVID. We always had a difficult time keeping all of our positions filled. Our plants are manual, more manual than automated. There's the environmental factors. It's hot in the summer, it's cold in the winter, it's loud when you're milling or refining or pressing. So some of those work elements make this not as attractive as maybe a more newer and automated plant. So we're struggling to get applicant pool. Our applicant pool is very small comparatively, but it has been doing that gradually over the last couple of years. And with COVID, that exponentially made it worse.
So Margaret, what about those folks that you have hired in outlying locations, let's say, as you mentioned? What's the expectation of them staying on board and working from home remotely?
We hired them with that intention. And so in the case of the 3 individuals we just brought on board, that's what made this role attractive, because they actually were moving themselves. So COVID impact of, hey, last 15 months was completely bizarre. I want to go live closer to family. I'm not going to live, I was away from family because of my job. I want to live closer to family. And if you're willing to let me do that, then I want that job. So I do believe that's going to create some stickiness, some loyalty with those employees, that we are flexible that way. Now, we're still working through that return to work with our folks that have been working remotely for the last 15 months, because in some instances, like in our Chicago plant, we needed more office space even before this occurred. So when we sent people home, we now have to say, how are we going to bring them back, and where are we going to bring them back, and what does the model look like? We want to balance what works best for the business, but certainly work with the employees' desires, because things have changed. People are saying, hey, initially, when you flipped the switch in March of 2020 and you told me to go home and I didn't take anything with me and I had to come back and get my monitor and my chair and everything else. Now I'm very accustomed to this, and I get more done with our commute time. You guys just talked about traffic. People would prefer probably to do something different than sit in their cars for an hour to get to work. So we're really managing to kind of balance what's best for the business and what's best for our folks.
Right. So Babatu, tell me a little bit. I see you shaking your head there with some of the comments that Margaret's making. So it sounds like you might be able to relate to some of their labor pains, but also I'm curious, I think the audience will be as well, as you also talked earlier about how collaborative your team is there and missing that component. How does that all blend in with a new hire?
Yeah, that's a really great lead in, and Margaret definitely touched on some things I can relate to, many of them. And I'll just quickly highlight her comments about manufacturing being a challenging labor pool. It was challenging before. And so there's a big body of work to try to go after seeding talent and, quite frankly, dealing with the image and perception problem of manufacturing. That's been ongoing, that we'll continue to have to deal with. And then COVID has complicated that, I guess, is the way that I will say that. And we're literally building our plant. So if you drive up 94 past Pleasant Prairie in Wisconsin, you would see a massive, massive structure. It's the largest concrete project in the Midwest. So we'll have close to 400 new associates there. And so we're not in the throes of struggling with what we know is going to be a challenge, but we've established a lot of different partnerships to address the challenge of labor in manufacturing, all the way from high school readiness programs to technical schools to colleges and universities. So we're anticipating a challenge, but we also feel like we have a great brand and a great employment proposition. So we're optimistic with respect to that. Now, in terms of the culture of our organization, I'll never forget this. It was Employee Appreciation Day in March of 2020. All of our associates were together, including our SVP of Operational Excellence, who is in from Turkey. So he's going to be joining us. And he wasn't in that role at that time. And we have a big picture, and we were all together standing around 100 years of HARIBO statue. That was really cool because we were celebrating our 100th year. And shortly thereafter, March 13th, we went out on a 2-day test of our technology to make sure we could work remotely. We didn't come back. we didn't come back until October 5th. And we came back for 3 weeks and things went really wild. And we said, you know what? We don't want to complicate COVID and flu season. And so, you're welcome to work remotely, but the office is open. And we've always taken the posture that the safety and well-being of our associates is our number one priority. So we did some things from an infrastructure perspective to make it a really great environment. And I can say with a straight face, it's safer than going to your supermarket, safer than going to your gas station and all the places that you go in your life. So if you choose to come in, you can come in, and we've created a good environment from that perspective. But how we've dealt with that, and again, there were some people who were a little bit hesitant about working remotely. We ended up doing it and made some great adjustments. Our IT team was fantastic about supporting the technology, making sure people had their basic needs met. We established some cultural norms like cameras on, just not like anonymous meetings, because we want to be able to see body language and be as connected as possible. And so those were some of the sort of just little tactical things that we did that made a difference. We encouraged our leaders to have, regular meetings, maybe more regular with your associates than you had before. And that's really to stay connected and to address the change. I mean, all of us were in a world that we'd never been in before. So much uncertainty. And the spectrum, right? There's people who roll with it and they're like, oh, this is just a great new exciting adventure. And others who are just terrified. And all of those perspectives and everything in between are perfectly valid, but that's what we dealt with. So we tried to hang on to the cornerstones of our culture as a way to maintain that connection and engagement. So in our organization, we celebrate things like baby showers and wedding showers, and we bring in the spouse and we bring in the family. Well, guess what? We did all that remotely. We had a big celebration at the end of the year where we do business awards, and it's our associate and their partner or their spouse, right? And we get together in Chicago at some nice hotel and do this big thing with awards and dressed up. Well, we did that virtually and literally in people's living rooms with family. And so there's all these things that we've done to try to connect and stay true to who we are as an organization. By the way, we cannot ignore what's just taken place. We just had a great year working remotely from a business performance perspective. And so to act like that didn't happen and say, now everybody needs to come back to the office. No, we have to address that. And we do have associates who have a different expectation. And we also have candidates who have a different expectation. So, Margaret talked about the market being very favorable for candidates. That's fantastic. And it's true. And we're starting to see candidates say, you know what, if I can't work remotely, I don't want that opportunity. And we just weren't seeing that before. And so those are some things that we're going to continue to get data around and decide how we're going to handle it. I can say in certain circumstances, we've shifted the way we've done hiring, and we have hired some folks that are based in the field, set some expectations about travel and coming into the office, the mothership, if you will. And if you think about it from a practical standpoint, onboarding into the organization is important. So we need to be connected to each other. And so, that you can expect to travel more upfront, even if you're remote, right? Those are the kinds of expectations that we're setting. And then from a candidate perspective specifically, this week we've started bringing candidates into the office. So during COVID, we did our very first virtual onboarding, and we onboarded candidates virtually. They never even came into the office. Equipment went to their home and everything else. As things have improved, we've now started, and 2 weeks ago or something, we had our summer interns. And we said, well, let's do that in the office. Because our office kind of feels like this bear. If you walk around, there are selfie stations all over the place with like colorful gold bears and big gold bear statues. And, we're about fun, right? And childlike happiness is one of our values. And so it's a differentiator for us. It's not like any other office I've ever been in. And so we like to capitalize on that asset, right? So we're starting to bring people in the interview process so that we're not dealing with the barrier of the unknown. I haven't been to this place. I have to make a decision about some place I've never been versus you can get comfortable. And again, it's a two-way street. Do you feel good about this place? And, it's helpful to do it early and upfront.
Yeah, great. Thanks for those comments. Lisa, you touch so many different angles in this space as it's recruiting, retention, and just the industry background you have. What are some of your thoughts around this topic as we look at this and how folks are accommodating the expectations of the, quote, new workforce, if you will?
Well, I'll second a lot of what Margaret and Babatu said, in that, recruiting, it is getting more and more difficult. There's a lot of openings right now. About 30% of C-level is turning over right now with retirement, based on retirement and performance. So like when things slowed down during COVID, and people kind of held in place, now they're going to make those changes. So a lot of C-level positions and upper positions are turning over. Another new phenomena that's not necessarily around COVID, but people are having to address, and COVID kind of like brought it maybe to the forefront, is we've been talking about millennials for a long time. Well, they're really coming. I mean, in 2025, which sounds really distant, it's 4 years away, 75% of our workforce will be millennials. And they're not boomers, and they're not looking at the workspace the way we did. They're looking at it a lot different, and people have to address those needs. Exactly what Babatu said. If you don't offer them a remote position, they might not accept it. Their values are different. It's all about tech, it's about values, and it's about lifestyle, and that's what they're really looking for when they're looking to make career moves. And those people, they're all the way, like I said, we're talking about people, in their late 40s. Well, no, I'd say their mid 40s to their late 20s. I mean, so that's the majority of our workforce, and they're all up and down the spectrum when it comes to positions. So that's a force to be reckoned with. And then, this past year also brought diversity to the forefront, and everybody now is looking for diversity, and that's just key. You have to, when you're looking for candidates, everybody wants a diversified slate to choose from. So those are issues that aren't necessarily around COVID, but were really brought to the forefront in 2020. And those are things that you're going to see people having to address. And virtual interviews too, I don't know that those are going to go away. They're really speeding up the process. And they also, kind of a nice thing that came out of that too, is they also allow for more diversity. So somebody before, when you were looking at somebody on paper and maybe they didn't make the cut, you're willing to spend that 30 minutes to go online now and talk to them and find out maybe that impression that they made on paper isn't exactly right. And that's creating a lot of opportunity as well, where before, to fly them out and take all that time, people wouldn't do that. But with the new technology that's become kind of commonplace now, that's changing the way we recruit as well.
Yeah, you can make 10 every day, right?
Yeah, those are great points, Lisa. And I think I just want to dovetail on that, because you talked about millennials, and you talked about some of the diversity and inclusion, and quite frankly, social justice, kind of the platforms that have gone on over the past year. Before this conversation, I was just thinking about kind of passion and purpose. And if you think about millennials, but even others that are outside of that demographic group, I think a lot of people have really recentered around what their passion is and what their purpose is over the past year, because it was this great time of reflection. And so as organizations, I think one of the things from a value proposition standpoint is we need to be clear about what our purpose is as an organization and how that connects to something of greater value. And just the quick story I'll tell you is driving down the interstate, I talked about our new plant. I was with my wife and my two daughters, which, by the way, my family is at the core of my passion and my purpose. And I said, hey, girls, they're 9 and 15. Do you want to see the new plant? Yeah, we want to see it. They're looking at this big construction thing. And I thought, well, how can I talk about this in a way that's meaningful to them beyond, oh, how cool, we're going to make gummy bears here. And I said, this is going to create, close to 400 family sustaining careers. And they understood that. They're like, oh, okay. So people can go raise a family by working here and live a lifestyle by working here and experience good things. Okay, that registers, right? And I think we have to all think about our own organizations and what are the things about how we connect to something greater than ourselves as a part of the value proposition. And it's more important now than it's ever been, and I think it will continue that way.
Yeah, thank you. So this next question, let's put to all panelists, and Michael, maybe you can kick us off with this one. what do you guys think about what industry or local government, whether that's city, county, or state, could be doing to facilitate recovery more than what's being done today?
A few thoughts, probably like three key areas. One is we are focusing on a few sectors that we believe will grow disproportionately in Chicago. We're well positioned to be a global leader, which is food and agriculture, because people don't know, like we had 3 years ago 85 food companies headquartered in Chicago. Now it's almost 400. We're seeing this huge opportunity for us. Second, life science and healthcare. We're on a great track right now to be the next big thing in life sciences. Boston is still in New York leading, but we are coming up fast with all the innovation startups we have. TDL, transportation, distribution, logistics, huge opportunity for us. And last but not least, manufacturing. We see a lot of opportunities for us right now to really actively, I do this personally with my team, pitch almost every single day opportunities. We bring manufacturing back from Asia to North America, to the United States, because some of the manufacturing processes that have gone offshore is almost like a security risk for our country. So I think we have a few sectors where we will focusing on, where the government and the mayor's office are really put a lot of resources against. Second, on workforce, because you talked a lot about workforce, I think we need to realize one thing. I think we have on the south and west side an untapped potential of amazing talent and people. And I think sometimes companies doing it the easy way, if you do a customer calls and you go to Alabama or Tennessee, because that's the trodden path. You saw with Discover Financial Services open up a 1,000 person customer care center at Chatham. And I talked with Roger, their CEO, and they're getting an amazing applications. So I think sometimes I'm challenging companies as well to look beyond what Lisa said, the usual path where you're getting attracting people from. And third, which is both of them are role as CMO and role with Chicago, we have to improve the perception of the business brand of the city of Chicago. Because I believe doing business in Chicago is much, much better than its perception. We have tremendous success stories. If you look even how we're coming out of recovery, we have the lowest unemployment rate of any large city. We had a clear, succinct plan how we're getting out of recovery. We probably managed COVID much better than any other city. And now just since January 1st, we have 35 companies who relocated and opened up new offices for the first time in Chicago during the pandemic. The number is the last 4 years. So I'm maybe optimistic what we're doing, but we need the business community to step up. We need the business community to realize, we have disenfranchised neighborhoods in South and West Side that have been neglected for decades. The city can't do it alone. Businesses need to look at them both from a diversity perspective, but also I think from the right thing to do for their business. So I'm very optimistic how we will manage the recovery out in Chicago.
Great, thanks, Michael. Other comments from the panel?
Yeah, Michael, I think your points are great. And Blommer is actually working closely with the Chicago Resiliency Network, as well as CRED and some other organizations to specifically work with potential candidates from the south and west sides of Chicago. And we have a good population of our folks that's where they're from. So we want to do some additional community outreach there. What we're finding though, and this is specifically in Chicago, but everywhere, but Chicago seems to be impacted by this more, is we do have an applicant pool there. We are hiring, but the attendance is not good. And what we have to think about is, why is that happening? And our structure is the old time structure where you have a first shift, second shift, third shift, 12-hour job, and it's fairly inflexible. I think the workforce now is looking for more flexibility, but we can't just flip that switch because the training it takes to do some of our jobs is very intense. So you can't say, I'm just going to work Monday and Wednesday this week, and next week I could work the whole week, and then the week after that I can only work Tuesday and Thursday. But we're seeing that they're making those decisions on their own by not coming into work. So that's where we are partnering with some of the social service agencies in Chicago to help us address this. And it's a lot around empathetic leadership and understanding what's impacting the employee outside of work, which is impacting the employee inside of work. But it's taking a whole 100+ year structure and scheduling process and changing it more to like that gig structure. and we haven't figured it out yet. So Babatu, if you guys have figured it out, I'd love to work with you on that.
I want to, Margaret, I think it's very, very important side what you just said. I want to applaud you for that, because companies have to realize we can't just complain, oh, the workforce is just not anymore as flexible. The companies have to change because the population, the expectation have changed. And that's the match. I think magic can happen. So thank you, Margaret, for your company's effort. I know your firm has been always a leader in that area.
Those were great questions. I don't have the magic answer for you. I wish I did, and we could have a call right after to talk about it and celebrate that success. But I think there are a couple of comments that were made, and I think the original question was what can cities do or do more of. I think there's a lot of good work that's being done in the city to really improve not only the perception but the reality. And I think that, quality of life is ultimately what helps drive people to our communities and retain them in our communities. And so I think anything that can be done in that respect to continue to improve the quality of life of all of the constituents in the community, that's a big deal. I can just use Milwaukee is not dissimilar from Chicago in that you have, areas where people are actively engaging and participating in the economic success and all the great things that the city has to offer, and then areas where people really are not, and significantly segregated. And so those structural barriers do need to be addressed. And I think it's, certainly a partnership in terms of employers being willing to continue to engage. And we engage in partnerships in the local communities as well. Like Margaret mentioned, we'll continue to do that. But one thing that came to mind when you talked about scheduling, Margaret, and this old structure, because you're right, I wouldn't say we have a great answer, but we are in a marketplace where we're putting our plant where we've made a decision not to do 12-hour days. And so, we're doing multi-shift operation, but they're 8-hour shifts. And again, that's not super flexible or super innovative, but it's one choice. Another choice we've made is when we actually built the business case around the new facility, we built into the business case a concept called floaters. And so floaters are basically kind of multi-skill individuals that can work in different areas. Another way to maybe say it is it's buffer headcount, so people can actually take vacation, go manage appointments, do the things that they need to do within their lives, because today manufacturing is still predicated on being at the machine, being on the line, producing the product, and we know that. So flexibility looks different in an office where we say, oh, you want to work from home today because you don't want to do the commute, it better serves your lifestyle, no problem. We're doing that, right? But in a plant, that's harder to do. But what you can do and what flexibility does look like is, resource a little differently, make sure people can cover and support each other, and then culturally make sure it's okay, right? That people have that permission to go do that and experience the most flexible lifestyle. In the end, manufacturing is manufacturing right now. So we can't just flip a switch and make it like something it's not. But I think those are the kind of nuanced things that can help.
Great, thank you. We're going to leave a little time for some Q&A. So we're bumping up against a little. However, there is one thing I'd like to maybe close us out on. And again, for all panelists to chime in if you'd like to. But clearly, all of our companies have been struck, right, through this time, whether it's the disruptors, the seismic shifts that we didn't expect. And we've probably all heard the term boomerang or frisbee effect from COVID of what we've done that's going to stick, what we've done one time and come back. But taking a look from a silver lining perspective, what would you say some of the things that you've learned during this time are going to stick around, and what could change and improve the way we see the world and do business?
I'm happy to start. I think the civic unrest and COVID are not that dissimilar. Both showed systemic inequality, one on the health side, one on just respectful and inclusive kind of treatment of people and our history. And they're connected. So I think what we have learned, we cannot build a great Chicago if you only focus on a few neighborhoods, and it's just for longer term, we're just neglecting big parts of our city. And that's the same for the country. And COVID has shown that we have a health crisis where, depending on the zip code, your life expectancy is 20 years of difference. We have to address that. I think we're on a good journey to addressing them, but it's a long, long path. And I'm looking forward. I'm excited about, because I think companies realize this, government realizes that, foundations realize that, and all these three pillars of our community working together, I think, like real true change.
Thanks, Michael.
I think I would add, and it piggybacks a little bit on what Babatu said, is, you know, all of our employees have experienced a lot of some level of stress because of COVID. And I think all of us were certainly I was shocked to see the world virtually closed. And we didn't anticipate that could ever happen in our lifetime. So employees are like, wait a minute, I have more control over what's going on in my life, and I'm going to speak up about it. And I think that is a good thing, where your example of somebody saying, hey, I need to work from home today because I have some appointments I need to manage, and it's better for me to do that. I think we should find a way to do that for everybody, and be diverse and be inclusive. So there's so many opportunities that my eyes opened up to say, you know, I didn't realize that maybe what we were doing wasn't an equal opportunity for everyone. And what I mean by that is we have policies and rules, whether it's office rules or whether it's attendance rules or whatnot, and it applied to everyone. So it's fair, right? If it applies to everyone. But then I said, well, wait a minute. Does it impact more of one group than another? And I've seen that some of the things we do does impact more of one group than another. So maybe it isn't actually equal, and maybe we need to learn a little bit more from that. So this last 15 months, we've learned a lot, whether it was COVID, whether it was the diversity and inclusion initiatives and the racial tension that happened last summer. I like that we learned that, and we now can work towards improving our business with that knowledge.
Great. Thank you, Margaret. Before I turn this over to Lisa, I just want to take this opportunity to thank each of you panelists so much. Michael, Margaret, Babatu, and Lisa, you guys have done a fantastic job. Thanks for sharing your intellectual capital.